What if I told you there's a forbidden book, kept secret for decades, that reveals the exact methods to shape your own reality? In 1922, Carl Jung began writing what he himself called his most dangerous work, the Red Book. For nearly a century, this work remained locked in a vault away from public eyes. Why? Because Jung discovered something the elites didn't want you to know, that your mind possesses powers far beyond what we imagine. He mapped precise techniques to access hidden layers of consciousness, methods to synchronize impossible events, and formulas to reprogram the reality around you. Jung wasn't just studying the human psyche, he was decoding the deepest secrets of existence. What you're about to discover will question everything you believed about the limits of the human mind. Prepare yourself to learn knowledge that has been deliberately hidden from you. 1. The secret Jung hid for 80 years. Picture this. One of the most brilliant minds in human history spends 16 years of his life writing a book, then locks it away where no one can see it. Not his closest friends, not his family, not even his students. For 8 decades, this manuscript sits hidden in a bank vault in Switzerland, sealed away from the world. This wasn't just any book. This was Jung's personal journey into the deepest, darkest corners of human consciousness. The Red Book wasn't meant to be a scientific work. It was something far more dangerous. Jung called it his confrontation with the unconscious, a direct descent into the hidden realms of the mind that most people never dare to explore. He knew that what he had discovered was too powerful, too revolutionary for the world of his time. The techniques he documented could fundamentally change how humans understand reality itself. What made this work so threatening? Jung had stumbled upon methods that allowed him to communicate directly with parts of his mind that operated beyond normal awareness. He found ways to tap into knowledge that seemed to come from nowhere, to predict events before they happened, and to influence circumstances through pure mental focus. These weren't theories. They were lived experiences that he carefully documented over years of inner exploration. The establishment wasn't ready for such revelations. Psychology was trying to become a respectable science, and Jung's discoveries threatened to blur the line between psychology and what some might call magic. His methods suggested that consciousness wasn't confined to the brain, that thoughts could influence physical reality, and that individuals could access information beyond their normal senses. Jung knew the implications were staggering. If people learned these techniques, they would realize that much of what they accepted as fixed reality was actually malleable. The power structures that depend on people feeling helpless and limited would crumble. So he made the difficult decision to keep his most profound discoveries secret, leaving only hints scattered throughout his published works. But secrets have a way of surfacing. When the Red Book was finally published in 2009, it sent shockwaves through academic and spiritual communities worldwide. Here, laid bare, were the actual methods Jung used to explore consciousness, the specific techniques that allowed him to bend reality to his will. The wait was over, but the implications were just beginning to be understood. The book revealed that Jung hadn't just been theorizing about the unconscious, he had developed practical tools for accessing it. He created detailed maps of inner landscapes that most people never even know exist. More importantly, he discovered that these inner realms weren't separate from external reality. They were intimately connected to it in ways that defy conventional understanding. Reading through his personal accounts, you realize that Jung had essentially cracked the code of consciousness itself. He found the secret pathways that connect thought to manifestation, the hidden mechanisms that turn mental energy into physical events. These weren't mystical abstractions, they were reproducible methods that anyone could learn and apply. 2. The active imagination method, your gateway to other dimensions. Deep within your mind lies a doorway that most people never discover. Jung found this doorway and developed a specific method to walk through it whenever he chose. He called this technique active imagination, but it's far more powerful than the name suggests. This isn't daydreaming or fantasy, it's a precise technology for accessing layers of consciousness that operate by completely different rules than ordinary thinking. The method works by entering a state that's neither fully awake nor asleep, but somewhere in between. In this twilight zone of consciousness, Jung discovered that mental images take on a life of their own. They become independent entities that can communicate, teach, and even predict future events. The key is learning to observe these images without trying to control them, allowing them to unfold according to their own mysterious logic. Jung spent countless hours in this state, carefully recording what he encountered. He found entire worlds existing within his psyche, populated by figures that seemed to possess knowledge he had never consciously acquired. These weren't products of his imagination in the normal sense. They were autonomous aspects of consciousness that operated according to their own intelligence. What makes this technique so powerful is that these inner figures don't just provide information, they can actually influence external circumstances. Jung discovered that by working with these entities, he could create changes in the physical world that seemed impossible through normal means. The boundary between inner and outer reality began to dissolve, revealing a deeper unity underlying all experience. The process requires a specific type of attention that most people have never developed. You must learn to focus your mind while simultaneously letting go of control. It's like becoming the director of a movie while also being surprised by what happens next. This paradoxical state of awareness is the key that unlocks the doorway to expanded consciousness. Once you master this technique, you gain access to guidance and knowledge that far exceeds your normal mental capabilities. The figures you encounter in active imagination often possess wisdom about your life path, solutions to problems you've been struggling with, and insights into the hidden connections between events. They become trusted advisors from a realm beyond ordinary consciousness. Jung realized that this method essentially allows you to step outside the normal flow of time and space. In the realm of active imagination, past, present, and future become fluid concepts. You can explore potential futures, gain understanding about past events, and discover the hidden threads that weave your life together into a meaningful pattern. The most remarkable aspect of this technique is how it begins to change your relationship with reality itself. As you spend more time in these expanded states of consciousness, you start to recognize the same patterns and principles operating in your external life. The barrier between inner and outer experience dissolves, and you begin to understand that consciousness is the fundamental fabric from which all reality is woven. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the Sim Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. 3. How Jung discovered the power of synchronicities. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the universe seems to be speaking directly to you? A song on the radio answers a question you were just thinking about. You bump into exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. A book falls open to the precise page you need to read. Most people dismiss these as mere coincidences, but Jung discovered something that will change how you see these events forever. Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe these meaningful coincidences, but he found they weren't coincidences at all. They were evidence of a hidden order operating beneath the surface of reality. Through years of careful observation, he mapped out how these events actually work, and more importantly, how you can learn to recognize and even trigger them. The breakthrough came when Jung realized that synchronicities always appear during moments of psychological transformation. When you're truly ready to grow, to change, to step into a new version of yourself, the universe responds by arranging circumstances in impossible ways. It's as if reality itself conspires to support your evolution, sending you exactly the signs, people, and opportunities you need. But here's where it gets really interesting. Jung discovered that synchronicities don't just happen to you. You can learn to create them. The secret lies in understanding that your inner state directly influences the outer world. When you align your thoughts, emotions, and intentions in a specific way, you begin to magnetize experiences that match that inner alignment. The process works through what Jung called the constellation of archetypal energy. When you focus intensely on a particular goal or question, you activate dormant patterns in the collective unconscious. These patterns then begin to organize events in the physical world, drawing together people, circumstances, and information in ways that seem impossible from a logical perspective. Jung spent years testing this principle in his own life. He would pose a question to the universe and then pay careful attention to the signs and symbols that appeared in his daily experience. Books would appear at just the right moment. Conversations would reveal exactly the insight he was seeking. Chance encounters would provide missing pieces to complex puzzles he was trying to solve. What made Jung's approach so effective was his understanding that synchronicities communicate through symbols rather than literal meanings. A broken clock might not be telling you about time. It might be signaling that you need to break free from old patterns. A flock of birds flying in a particular direction might be showing you the path forward on an important decision. The key to working with synchronicities is developing what Jung called symbolic perception. This means looking beyond the surface meaning of events to discover the deeper message they're trying to convey. Every experience becomes a potential communication from the deeper layers of reality that most people never learn to decode. Jung also discovered that synchronicities tend to cluster around certain types of people, those who are actively engaged in psychological development and spiritual growth. It's as if the universe rewards those who are genuinely seeking truth and transformation by opening channels of communication that remain closed to others. The most powerful synchronicities often involve what Jung termed meaningful connections across time. You might think about someone you haven't seen in years, only to encounter them the next day. You might have a vivid dream that later plays out in waking life with uncanny accuracy. These events suggest that consciousness operates outside the normal boundaries of time and space. Learning to work with synchronicities requires a fundamental shift in how you approach life. Instead of trying to force outcomes through willpower alone, you learn to set clear intentions and then remain alert for the ways the universe responds. You become a co-creator with the deeper intelligence that orchestrates reality, working in partnership rather than struggling against the flow of events. 4. The inner dialogue technique that changes everything. Inside your mind right now, there's a conversation happening that most people never pay attention to. Jung discovered that this internal dialogue isn't just random chatter. It's actually a gateway to accessing the deepest wisdom available to human consciousness. By learning to engage in specific types of inner conversation, you can tap into knowledge and guidance that far exceeds your normal mental abilities. Jung called this technique active dialogue with the unconscious, and it became one of his most powerful tools for psychological transformation. The method involves learning to have genuine conversations with different aspects of your psyche, treating them as real entities with their own personalities, wisdom, and perspectives. Most people's inner dialogue is chaotic and unproductive, a mixture of worries, judgments, and repetitive thoughts that create more confusion than clarity. Jung discovered that by bringing conscious intention to this process, you can transform it into a source of profound guidance and insight. The key is learning to distinguish between the voice of your ordinary ego and the deeper voices that emerge from the unconscious mind. The technique begins by identifying a specific issue or question you want to explore. Then, instead of trying to figure out the answer through normal thinking, you pose the question internally and wait for a response from a deeper part of yourself. This requires a particular type of patience and receptivity that most people have never developed. What happens next often surprises people who try this technique for the first time. Instead of hearing your own familiar mental voice, you begin to receive responses that seem to come from a completely different intelligence. These inner voices often possess knowledge you don't consciously have access to, offer perspectives you would never have considered, and provide solutions to problems that have been troubling you for years. Jung discovered that different aspects of the psyche have distinct personalities and areas of expertise. There's a wise elder voice that can provide guidance about life direction. There's a creative voice that offers innovative solutions to practical problems. There's even a shadow voice that, when approached respectfully, can reveal hidden truths about yourself and your situations. The most remarkable aspect of this technique is how these inner voices seem to know things about your future that you couldn't possibly predict through normal reasoning. They might warn you about potential problems before they arise, or encourage you to take actions that only make sense months later when events unfold in unexpected ways. Jung found that the quality of guidance you receive depends entirely on the attitude you bring to the dialogue. If you approach your inner voices with respect, genuine curiosity, and willingness to hear difficult truths, they respond with profound wisdom. If you try to manipulate the process or only want to hear what confirms your existing beliefs, the guidance becomes shallow and unreliable. The technique also requires learning to distinguish between genuine inner wisdom and the ego's attempts to manufacture answers. True guidance from the unconscious often has a quality of surprise. It tells you things you didn't expect to hear and challenges your assumptions about yourself and your life. False guidance, on the other hand, usually just confirms what you already think you know. 5. The secret symbols that reprogram your mind. Your unconscious mind speaks a language that's completely different from ordinary words. Jung discovered that this language consists of symbols, powerful images that can bypass your rational defenses and directly reprogram the deepest layers of your psyche. These aren't just pretty pictures or abstract concepts. They're actual tools that can rewire your brain, change your beliefs, and transform your entire relationship with reality. Jung spent years studying symbols from every culture and time period, searching for the universal patterns that speak to something deep within human consciousness. What he found was astounding. Certain symbols appear in every civilization throughout history, suggesting they tap into fundamental structures of the human mind. These archetypal symbols carry tremendous power because they connect you directly to the collective wisdom of our entire species. The most transformative symbols work by activating what Jung called autonomous complexes in the unconscious mind. These are like independent programs running in the background of your consciousness, influencing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways you're normally not aware of. When you work with the right symbols, you can actually reprogram these complexes, changing automatic patterns that have been controlling your life for years. Jung discovered that symbols work through a process he called participation mystique, a deep, wordless identification that happens below the level of conscious thought. When you truly connect with a powerful symbol, something inside you recognizes it as more real and meaningful than ordinary reality. This recognition creates a bridge between your conscious mind and the vast intelligence of the unconscious, allowing profound changes to occur. The key to working with symbols effectively is understanding that they must be experienced, not just intellectually understood. You can read about the meaning of a symbol for hours, but until you feel its power viscerally, it remains just an interesting concept. Jung developed specific techniques for activating symbols so they could do their transformative work. One of the most powerful methods involves what Jung called symbol meditation. This isn't the kind of meditation where you try to empty your mind. Instead, you focus intently on a specific symbol, allowing its image to fill your consciousness completely. As you do this, the symbol begins to come alive, revealing layers of meaning and triggering profound shifts in your inner landscape. Jung found that different symbols activate different aspects of psychological development. The symbol of the tree, for instance, connects you to your potential for growth and the deep roots of your being. The mandala symbol harmonizes opposing forces within your psyche, creating inner unity and peace. The symbol of the hero's journey awakens your courage and determination to overcome obstacles. But here's where Jung's work gets really revolutionary. He discovered that symbols don't just change your inner experience, they actually influence external reality as well. When you work deeply with a symbol, you begin to attract experiences and opportunities that align with the energy that symbol represents. It's as if the symbol becomes a magnet, drawing circumstances into your life that support its manifestation. The most profound symbols often appear spontaneously in dreams, visions, or moments of creative inspiration. Jung taught people to pay special attention to these personally meaningful symbols, as they often carry specific messages about your unique life path. These personal symbols can be even more powerful than universal ones, because they speak directly to your individual psychological needs. Jung also discovered that symbols can be combined and layered to create even more powerful effects. By working with multiple complementary symbols simultaneously, you can address different aspects of your psychological development at the same time. This creates a synergistic effect where the combined power of the symbols far exceeds what any single symbol could accomplish alone. 6. The daily ritual that Jung used to shape reality. Every morning, Jung performed a simple ritual that most people would dismiss as meaningless. But this daily practice was actually the foundation of his ability to influence reality in extraordinary ways. Through years of refinement, he developed a precise sequence of mental and physical actions that aligned his consciousness with deeper forces, setting the stage for remarkable synchronicities and manifestations throughout each day. The ritual didn't require any special equipment or elaborate preparations. Jung understood that true power comes from consistency and intention, not from complex ceremonies. What made his approach so effective was how it systematically programmed his unconscious mind to work in partnership with the hidden intelligence that orchestrates reality. Jung would begin each morning by entering what he called a state of receptive awareness. This meant clearing his mind of all agenda and expectations, becoming like an empty vessel ready to receive guidance from deeper sources. He would sit quietly, focusing on his breathing, until he felt connected to something larger than his ordinary ego consciousness. Once he established this receptive state, Jung would pose a simple question to the universe about the day ahead. Not specific requests for particular outcomes, but an open inquiry about how he could best align with the flow of events. This wasn't prayer in the traditional sense. It was more like plugging into a cosmic intelligence network and asking for the day's download. The next part of the ritual involved what Jung called symbolic visioning. He would allow images to arise spontaneously in his mind, paying careful attention to whatever symbols appeared. These weren't forced visualizations, but organic images that emerged from the unconscious. He would spend time with each image, feeling its emotional resonance and noting any insights or intuitions it triggered. Jung discovered that these morning symbols often provided a preview of the day's significant events. A symbol of flowing water might indicate that flexibility would be needed, An image of a mountain might suggest that patience and persistence would be required. A bird in flight might signal that new opportunities were approaching. After the symbolic visioning, Jung would set what he called dynamic intentions for the day. These weren't ordinary goals, but intentions that were aligned with the energy patterns he had perceived during the receptive phase. By setting intentions that harmonized with the deeper currents of reality, he ensured that his conscious efforts would be supported rather than resisted by unseen forces. The final element of Jung's daily ritual involved making what he called symbolic gestures, simple physical actions that anchored his intentions in the material world. This might involve touching a meaningful object, drawing a quick sketch, or performing a brief movement sequence. These gestures created a bridge between the inner realm of consciousness and the outer realm of physical reality. What made this ritual so powerful was how it trained Jung's mind to operate from a state of continuous alignment with deeper intelligence. Instead of approaching each day with a rigid agenda imposed by ego desires, he learned to flow with the natural patterns of unfolding events while still maintaining clear intention and purpose. Over time, Jung noticed that his external circumstances began to reflect the quality of consciousness he cultivated through this daily practice. Meaningful coincidences increased dramatically. The right people appeared at the right times. Solutions to problems emerged effortlessly. It was as if reality itself was responding to the coherent signal he was broadcasting through his morning ritual. The ritual also served as a daily reminder that consciousness is the primary creative force in the universe. By beginning each day with this recognition, Jung maintained awareness of his power to influence circumstances through the quality of his inner state. This awareness became the foundation for all his other techniques for working with reality. 7. How to access your higher self using Jung's method. Deep within your psyche lives a version of yourself that possesses wisdom, clarity, and power that your ordinary consciousness can barely imagine. Jung discovered that this higher self isn't just a spiritual concept. It's an actual psychological reality that you can learn to access and communicate with directly. This inner guide knows things about your life path that your rational mind could never figure out, and it can provide guidance that transforms every aspect of your existence. Jung called this aspect of the psyche the self with a capital S, the organizing principle that orchestrates your psychological development and connects you to the deeper patterns of meaning in your life. Unlike your everyday ego, which gets caught up in temporary concerns and surface-level problems, your higher self operates from a perspective that sees the bigger picture of your soul's journey. The method Jung developed for accessing this inner wisdom involves creating what he called a sacred inner space, a psychological environment where your higher self feels safe to emerge and communicate. This requires learning to quiet the constant chatter of your ordinary mind and create a receptive silence where deeper voices can be heard. Jung discovered that your higher self communicates through a combination of images, feelings, and direct knowing, rather than ordinary words. When you successfully make contact, you don't just receive information. You receive a transmission of wisdom that changes you at the cellular level. It's like downloading an upgrade to your consciousness that expands your capacity to navigate life with grace and purpose. The first step in Jung's method involves learning to distinguish between the voice of your ego and the voice of your higher self. Your ego speaks with urgency, fear, and attachment to specific outcomes. It's constantly worried about survival, status, and getting what it wants. Your higher self, by contrast, communicates with a quality of calm certainty, unconditional love, and trust in the unfolding process of life. Jung taught people to begin each session by setting a clear intention to connect with their highest wisdom, while releasing any agenda about what they hope to hear. This paradoxical attitude, seeking guidance while remaining unattached to receiving particular answers, creates the optimal conditions for authentic contact with the higher self. Once you establish the proper inner environment, Jung's method involves posing questions to your higher self and then entering a state of relaxed attention, waiting for responses to emerge. These responses often come in unexpected forms: a sudden knowing, a symbolic image, a shift in your emotional state, or even a change in your physical sensations. What makes Jung's approach so effective is how it teaches you to recognize your higher self's unique communication style. Some people receive guidance primarily through visual symbols. Others hear an inner voice that speaks with unmistakable authority. Still others feel guidance through bodily sensations or sudden emotional shifts that carry clear messages about the right direction to take. Jung discovered that your higher self possesses knowledge about future events that seems impossible from a rational perspective. It can warn you about problems before they manifest, guide you toward opportunities that haven't yet appeared, and help you make decisions that only prove their wisdom months or years later. This prophetic quality suggests that your higher self exists outside the normal boundaries of time and space. The most transformative aspect of working with your higher self is how it gradually changes your entire approach to life. Instead of struggling against circumstances or trying to force outcomes through willpower alone, you learn to consult your inner wisdom before making important decisions. This creates a life of flow and synchronicity where you're constantly supported by forces beyond your ordinary understanding. Jung found that people who develop a strong connection with their higher self begin to experience what he called individuation, a natural process of becoming who they truly are rather than who they think they should be. Your higher self guides this process with perfect precision, orchestrating experiences that help you release false identities and embrace your authentic nature. 8. The final formula: transforming thoughts into physical reality. Everything Jung discovered about consciousness, symbols, synchronicity, and the higher self was building toward one ultimate revelation: the precise formula for transforming mental energy into physical manifestation. This isn't wishful thinking or positive psychology. This is a systematic method for directing the creative power of consciousness to reshape the material world according to your deepest intentions. Jung's formula operates on the principle that consciousness and physical reality are not separate phenomena, but different expressions of the same underlying energy. When you learn to align your thoughts, emotions, and intentions in a specific way, you tap into the fundamental force that creates and sustains all material existence. The formula consists of 4 distinct phases that must be executed in precise sequence. The first phase involves what Jung called archetypal alignment, connecting your personal desires to universal patterns that already exist in the collective unconscious. This step is crucial because individual will alone is never strong enough to override the established patterns of reality. But when your intentions align with archetypal forces, you gain access to tremendous power. Jung discovered that certain archetypal patterns are especially potent for manifestation work. The archetype of the creator gives you power to bring new things into existence. The archetype of the transformer allows you to change existing circumstances. The archetype of the magician provides the ability to work with hidden forces and unseen connections. The second phase involves energetic saturation, building up sufficient psychological energy to fuel the manifestation process. Jung found that most people's desires remain at the level of weak wishes because they never generate enough emotional intensity to activate the deeper creative forces. The key is learning to concentrate your entire being around a single intention until it becomes the most real thing in your consciousness. This energetic build-up requires what Jung called psychological compression, taking all your scattered mental and emotional energy and focusing it like a laser beam on your desired outcome. You must be willing to temporarily sacrifice attention to everything else in order to generate the concentrated force necessary for manifestation. The third phase is symbolic embodiment, encoding your intention into powerful symbolic forms that can communicate directly with the unconscious mind. Jung discovered that the unconscious doesn't respond well to abstract concepts or logical arguments, but it's incredibly receptive to vivid, emotionally charged symbols that capture the essence of what you want to create. The most effective symbols for manifestation work are those that arise spontaneously from your own unconscious, rather than symbols you choose intellectually. Jung taught people to enter deep meditative states and allow their intentions to spontaneously take symbolic form. These personally meaningful symbols carry far more power than generic visualization techniques. The final phase involves what Jung called conscious surrender, releasing your attachment to how and when your intention will manifest while maintaining absolute faith that it will occur. This paradoxical state of detached certainty is perhaps the most difficult aspect of the formula to master, but it's absolutely essential for success. Jung understood that the ego's need to control outcomes actually interferes with the natural manifestation process. By learning to surrender the how while maintaining clarity about the what, you allow the deeper intelligence of the universe to orchestrate circumstances in ways that exceed your limited imagination. The complete formula creates what Jung termed psychic causation, the ability of consciousness to directly influence physical events through non-material means. When all four phases are executed properly, you become a conscious co-creator with the fundamental forces that shape reality, gaining the power to transform not just your inner experience, but your actual life circumstances in remarkable ways. Jung's final teaching was that this power comes with tremendous responsibility. Those who learn to bend reality must use this ability in service of their highest development and the greater good of humanity, never for selfish gain or to harm others.